Thank you for joining iMeet.
So here we go. Nope.
This meeting is now being recorded.
There we go. So we've really struggled trying to figure out the right marketing approach that really inspires people who want direct primary care, both patients and self-insured employers in particular. And the idea was, some of you have been at the forefront of trying to do this. And each of you has your experience. May have failed at some things, you may have succeeded at some things, but we really want to tap into your experience and your wisdom. So why don't we do this? Why don't we start off, I think I sent, hopefully you got a copy of this list, the questions that we have. And what's your greatest audience and who should this video be made for? And given that we have 5 or 6 people on the call, it could get a bit congested. Why don't I just walk through the group and ask you to respond to that question. Want to react to one another's thoughts or comments. So, Erica, why don't we start with you? You were the last one on the call. The last
last one first.
From the point of view of audience in marketing direct primary care, what are your thoughts about who the target groups are and who the audience is?
I think, I go back and forth on this. I think that we're kind of at an interesting point now where it is of probably major value to get individuals aware of, to make individuals aware of direct primary care. I'm starting to think that at this point there's a need for pressure from the general population and demand through individual purchasing, through their employers, or through plans to be able to get this kind of care. And then when you look at individuals, who are the people who make purchasing decisions, it's all the usual stuff that I've always heard, which is, women, in families are usually making the healthcare purchasing decisions, maybe, focusing on no younger than age 30, maybe 30 to 50 years old or something like that. I'm not a marketing expert, so I'm just throwing these out as ideas. Because I'm just trying to think about people who actually think about purchasing healthcare and would speak up about it if they weren't happy with what they were offered. And these are also the people who have bought plans on the exchanges and have found that they've been really stuck because they cost a lot more than they realized and they don't cover as much as they'd hoped and all that kind of thing.
Brian, what are your thoughts?
So, part of me, my initial instinct is to say I don't like to say there is a target population because I really do think that DPC has something for a lot of folks. But certainly people who have, super duper insurance plans or super duper Medicare with 5 supplements may not be the primary targets. So I think that people that do sort of fall through the cracks is that's sort of my passion with our version anyway, is people who either don't make enough money to qualify for Medicaid, or they make just a little too much, or they're in our state, if you're male, it's very difficult at all to qualify for Medicaid. People that, like Erica said, have purchased the least expensive plan they can on the exchanges, maybe because they didn't get subsidies, have found out that, pretty much they're still uninsured for primary care except for their physical each year because the deductibles are so high. And I think individuals, because what we're finding a lot of is, especially now that the individual mandate with the ACA's gone through, is individuals that don't have health care insurance provided by their employer are looking for options to, number one, satisfy that requirement, and also looking for ways they can actually afford to get primary care. And so the individuals that want to satisfy the mandate they're purchasing plans through some of the healthcare sharing ministries that couple with DPC so that, their DPC membership fees are paid, but they also are classified as having insurance under the ACA, and their premiums can be, 60 to 70% less. And we're really seeing a groundswell of demand in our area for individuals that are signing up for those plans, people who are tradespeople, plumbers, construction workers, carpenters, mechanics, all sorts of folks that, they have a job, they're working, but even with their job, they don't get free insurance. It's not totally free, or if they do have an employer that covers it, maybe their portion is so much that they can't even afford their portion of the premium. I would say that's a big portion. I think that I would just label that as the people who fall through the cracks and aren't able to get, good coverage or have good access to primary care in any other way.
Okay. Rushika?
Yeah, hi everyone. It's great to have everyone's voice. And just, I need to cut off at 3:30 Eastern, so I'm going to expand a little bit beyond. One of the things we've learned is that, I think we learned this from working with our union friends, is that at first, what we're asking people to do in general is potentially change their doctor. And I think that the first reaction almost anyone is how's your current health care or can't complain. And you need to, one thing we learned from our union friends is you first have to radicalize people before you can convert them. You need to sort of point out to them that there is a better thing and that what you have right now isn't great, because I think unfortunately the level of expectation, I get treated like crap, I wait for 2 hours, I can't eat by my doctor, all those things people just take as a given. So again, I think we're sort of, in terms of who we're targeting, like I said, we have different practices. Actually, really lots and lots of different people get appeal to this. I think we found in general women more than men, that women seem to pay more attention to their health care and are willing to pay something for it. The number one reason that guys come into our practice is because my wife made me or girlfriend made me. So I think targeting female over male might be a good idea. But I think, again, we've got seniors, we have young people. I think it really can be above the spectrum and lots of different income levels too. But I think the key to this is doing a little bit of radicalizing people and a bit of why is it that the current system is, what you have now isn't great and it could be better.
Okay. Alan?
Did you say me? I missed that.
Yes, Alan.
Yeah, so my observation, having done this for 14 years, is that the two groups, and we've unlike Alliance, that has figured out how to get better into the employer market, which I think is awesome, but we've kind of grown ones by ones, and our target groups end up kind of being the high-end and the low-end people. So the low-end people with HSAs, kind of like you have to see the price. So I always say if it's your money, we offer you something that you can't get anywhere else that's going to save you time and money. And the other part of that question are the people who are high-value people, because their time is valuable. And so we also have lots of executives. So the people who have traditional plans, of which because I'm in the federal region with lots of federal plans, none of those people are interested in my plans because they get a $20 copay, and they get 2 days off of work in order to go as a benefit. So they don't care that they miss work, and all they want to do is get it under the insurance and not have to pay something to get it fixed right away. So it's really time and money. In my view, those are the two groups. And of course, the other group are employers and how to target those groups, which I am not successful at. So those are the two messages I think that are the important messages of the movement for at least who's the target market.
So being mindful of the time, and I know Rashika has to go, so I'm going to ask you to start off in this. I'm going to pick up on what Alan just said. When you're targeting employers, what works with employers? Maybe Rushika could go first, and then Erica, because I know you've been trying to do that. But what do you think, Rushika? What works with employers?
So it's really hard. I think that everyone knows. I think the sales cycle is hard, and so I think you need to. Probably the best thing that works is engaging individuals who are employed, particularly even higher up, or maybe even lower up, to advocate for it. So I think a lot of the employers we get starts with an individual who does it and loves it and says, hey, this should be done by the employer. So I think that's number one. I think some of the bigger employers we've talked to, the productivity gains are almost more important than just the healthcare cost gains. But yes, we could talk about healthcare costs, but the fact that people don't have to leave work, they're at work more, they can deal with things better, is one. And then the other thing that employers really like is this is a benefit that people thank them for. So, one of our sponsors of HR is the only benefit that people come and hug me in the hallways because of what we've done to them, because it really impacted their life and their family's life. So I think those are the thoughts. So Erica has more to add.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting how people place value on this and how they make the determination. It's so funny because sometimes people say, oh my God, that's so cheap, but they don't have any idea how much the system normally pays for what we do. Alan, I think what you said is spot on in terms of what people are looking for. So coming back to what the audience would be, we struggle with this with employers ourselves because, you get small companies that are on fully insured plans where you can't really talk about savings, but you can talk about a healthier, more productive workforce. Or you can talk about access and, that kind of thing. But it's always kind of a combination of factors that attract people. And then, if the people who end up using it, it's a whole bunch of different factors too. So, but I think that when it comes down to it for what people end up valuing, it really is true that when they actually experience the care, they really value the relationship as long as they make that connection. And I think that you can hang a lot of stuff off of the relationship, like accessibility. Accessibility strengthens and makes possible a good relationship. And, good care that's, anticipating things and jumping on things quickly, that creates a very trusting relationship. So the executive who doesn't have a lot of time, if you take care of their needs in a way that works for them, then that enhances the relationship. The person who's trying to save money and is trying to stay out of trouble, if you do that for them, then they trust you, and that's a good relationship. So, that's always, we've always kind of come back to that as the value proposition that really matters for the individual. They may come in through various different doors, but they end up ideally valuing the relationship, and that's what keeps them coming back. So I don't know if I answered the question exactly. I kind of veered off a little bit, I think, but.
I have one comment on this. You made me think about something, which to me, one of the things is that we all say, you don't really know what it's like until you've experienced it. And there are a lot of examples in life where we're that way. I can remember saying I didn't need a cell phone, or why would I need the internet, or why do I need a navigator? Once you've experienced it, you never come back. And part of this movement is that people once they experience it, they understand, oh my goodness, this is so much better. It has so many other values that are important to me. But I wouldn't think that until I actually experience it. I have to go use it.
I totally agree.
A little bit.
So
some of it's that is how do you get people to kind of like shake them up, a little bit like that ad about how Apple changed their marketing brand about the movers, the shakers, those dreamers. Like you have to experience this to really understand it. Otherwise, you're stuck in this old metaphor of it's a $20 copay and I wait 6 days.
So the little caveat to that is, Rishikesh, we did. It's different. So we've done focus groups, of our patients and ask them, what do you like? And one thing they'll say is, I feel like when I walk in, people know who I am. They treat me like family. And then but then you do focus groups, people who are not in the practice. Say, what do you think about a place where they treat you like, it's sort of like you're part of a family? And then they say, well, I hate my family, and so there's a disconnect. We be careful not to just look at the people who are coming in. It's the people not coming in, and I think it is. If they don't experience what we mean by that, maybe we're just not articulating it well. It means something different.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Brian. I would just say that one of the things I've seen with employers that's key to them, obviously the cost is important, and their healthcare dollars they're spending. But I think the second part is the reassurance to employers, in particular CFOs of companies, that their employees will not interpret any change in their benefits as the employer just trying to get something cheaper. So, for example, the CEO of Whole Foods said to me, it's one thing when we tell our employees their benefits are changing, but if we tell them it's changing and then they go and they actually like it, and it's actually a better experience, then that's very reassuring, because the assumption is always when you hear that, hey, we're getting another new insurance package, you assume you're going to have a higher copay and, longer waits and a narrower network. And so the companies really like the fact that this is something where they can be saving money, but where their employees also don't feel like, yeah, you're saving money, but I'm having a worse experience. They're actually getting the win-win of a better experience and at a good value.
Nathan, I'm kind of monopolizing things here. Do you have some issues you want to raise?
Yeah, well, it's interesting to hear everyone's perspective about all these issues. I think, the way I'm trying to sort of consume the information that you guys are giving to me is, we've got to figure out a way to get all this information into a very short amount of time, so that people and present it to them in an engaging way that resonates with them, so that they're actually willing to sit through it and pay attention to why and how this model is going to improve their lives or improve their experience. I feel like I think a lot of the stuff that Larry and I have already talked about, we're sort of touching on right now about the specific kinds of people. It's interesting to hear that women are the ones who are making most of the decisions, and it's nice to know the age group. But yeah, I think that the difficult part, it's super important that we decide who our audiences are. So we're creating two videos. We're creating one video that's going to be geared towards basically the general public. It'll be a specific audience within the general public, but it's going to be specifically catering towards potential patients. And then the second video is going to be a video that's going to try to cater more towards employers. And they're going to have a lot of the same information, but I think at the end of the day, we really need to figure out exactly the information that both patients and employers need to know in order to feel engaged and motivated to try and change things, and to feel informed enough that they really understand what this movement is like. And I think it's interesting. It's tough because the reality is, if people don't understand it until they try it, the hard part is getting them to try it, right? So I think that's sort of what we've got to try to accomplish. And I'm not quite sure yet who specifically the audience is. And I think that once we decide on that, we'll be able to move forward a little bit more. The trick also is that all of you guys have slightly different business plans. They're just a little bit different. So we need to make the videos general enough that they sort of cover more or less what everyone does, but not so specific that, but not give so much information that it alienates any one of your practices. And so I think, I guess we'll get to those later, but it'll be important to figure out the main points that we're trying to get across that everyone does without sort of, getting into too many specifics so that we alienate one or more practices.
So I've got
Nathan,
a question. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that one of the things that's really powerful in trying to get people to resonate with this idea and really see themselves sort of in this role as either a patient or employer is to make sure that a big portion of the video should be patients telling stories in the patient video, because then patients watching that will relate to the patients in those videos. They can see themselves, in that patient's story. Well, that patient tried it and they liked it and it really worked for them. And by the same token, I think in the employer video, what you should have is you should have people, leaders in companies that have sort of bought, DPC. A company that's chosen DPC and to contract directly, you talk with the folks, the decision makers in those companies, and you interview them, and then other employers watching can identify with that. They can say, oh, well, that employer tried it, and they're the CFO of that company or the head of human resources or whatever, and this is why they saw value. And I think that's how you get your audience to resonate, is by having people that are in your audience be the one telling their story of DPC on the video.
Yeah, we've discussed those ideas, and I think that there's definitely a lot of merit to that idea. I think that there's also there's quite a bit of research on these kinds of videos where we have patients talking about their experience or companies talking about their experience in terms of selling a variety of different services. And there's very mixed reviews on how effective they are, mostly because people always question the motivations of the people in the videos. So that's partially just a challenge in creating a video that seems honest and that's telling a real story. But I think that might be part of it, but I'm not sure that that's all of it. I also think that there's got to be a component to these films that's engaging enough that people want to sit through it. And I don't know if only having people talk about their experiences is going to be engaging enough. That said, we haven't sort of pushed that off the table. I think that that's definitely something that I do agree that it potentially has, the ability to convince some people, but I'm not sure that that's the whole story. But yeah, we've been talking about that.
Yeah, I don't think that's the whole thing. I don't think it's just a film about people's experiences with DPC, but I think it's an important part to have somebody who's actually, experienced it from that perspective, have some segment on there. Sort of when I thought about this from the get-go, and again, not to make it all about this, but I was sort of thinking of it from the title being something like The Many Faces of DPC. And with the idea being, that it does a lot for a lot of different people, and it's a good healthcare solution for companies. It's a good personal health solution for individuals. So I just think this telling those stories that are real, and I totally agree with you. People are going to look at that and say, well, were these people paid endorsers? And maybe it's even important to say in there, no one in this video was a paid endorser as a patient or anything, but I just think that'll be a key part to getting some people to sort of feel the realness and the emotions and stuff that patients have, and also the logistic and sort of logical feelings that employers have about why this is a good idea.
Well, so Alan, so we created a handful of films for Doc Talker, and I guess do you have any experience on how effective those films were for you with your patients talking about how great Doc Talker was?
Yeah, our analytics show that most people don't see them or watch them, and I haven't had anyone tell me at all that the video affected their behavior or that they watched them.
So here's what I'll say about that, and I brought that up specifically just because I wanted to give it as an example. Those films are good, and I think that if patients do watch them, they'll feel like Doc Talker is a great option. The problem is that nobody's going to watch this video if it's patients and employers talking to them. It's got to be exciting. It's got to be engaging. It's got to be, the reason why Bank of America and Geico and, Allstate don't use the strategies because it doesn't keep people's attention, and we don't have a captive audience. It's going to be distributed through the web, and people are going to need to be compelled to watch this for one reason or another. And I don't think that we can achieve that through interviews. So I think we have to think sort of carefully about how to create something that's engaging enough that somebody will say, oh, that was like, I learned something. It was kind of fun to watch, even though I don't really like thinking about healthcare, but it was fun to watch. I think that it's a tricky kind of thing to sell, which is sort of why Larry and I had this question, which was on that sheet that we sent out, which is, if you guys can think of a campaign, an ad campaign or a commercial that tries to sell a similar kind of product. And when I say a similar kind of product, I don't mean like, healthcare. I mean something that isn't fun, like banking or insurance or something like that. And figuring out what it was about those campaigns that were effective, is going to be, I think, critical to figuring out how we can try and sell this product.
Yeah.
So I don't know if any of you guys thought about that question, but if you did, I would love to hear your thoughts.
This is Erica, if I could jump in. I've actually been thinking about this a lot because someone sent me some video about, it was something about social media marketing. And it was talking about videos and, how can you possibly produce a low-cost video that will actually catch people's attention, that kind of thing. And there was something about, it was some company that sells razor blades for shaving, basically. And, sorry, my dog is and it was the funniest thing. It was just, it kind of poked fun at sort of the status quo, but then it presented their service in a totally exaggerated way that was funny, but it totally got the point across. And, by the end of the ad, you're like, wow, I don't even need razor blades. I'd buy some from this guy. You know what I mean? So I kind of think about, and then I think about those little videos that have been done that said, what would it be like if healthcare was, if like buying an airline ticket was like healthcare or buying groceries was like healthcare. I don't know if you guys have seen those. But again, they're really compelling because they're funny and sad and totally spot on. And it's funny because with healthcare, you really don't have to exaggerate all that much to show how bad it is, but it's kind of comical in a way. And then, to contrast it with, what would it be like if your doctor actually had time for you and paid attention? Another thought I had was to kind of poke fun at the healthcare system's incessant marketing around we're patient-centered and we're there for you and you want your doctor by your side and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if it's in your markets, but, all the health systems here have had these ad campaigns going for a while about, how, this is what health looks like, and it's like, healthy people or, the doctor partnering with the patient or something. It's kind of so hackneyed and it's so not what they deliver. So anyway, thinking in terms of what's catchy for people and what might get them thinking about things differently is just to sort of stretch, rather than being earnest and saying, look how great this is, and wouldn't you rather have this than what you have now, actually to kind of stretch it beyond and use some humor and exaggeration to get people to kind of focus on, yeah, this is kind of bad the way that it is. Why are we putting up with this? It's kind of ridiculous. So anyway, just a couple of thoughts on that.
Well, and by the way, as you were talking, Erica, one of the thoughts that came up to me that is frequently mentioned among a lot of people I talk with is how people are in water like frogs, and the water's slowly heating, and they won't jump out. And right. That could just be all the different. You could create this almost cartoonish talking frogs in a pond that's getting hotter and hotter as the costs and crazy things are going up, and trying to get a guy who's sitting outside of there saying, get the hell, you could come up with some kind of a storyline where it's like, get the hell out of there, jump into DP,
right.
Get into a different
jump while you can.
Jump while you can, because patients are literally, they don't want to jump. It's awful, it's terrifying, it's hot. Doctors are the same way. They don't want to jump either. They're like, I don't want to change the world. I don't want to change what I don't. What is that saying? Better to stick with the devil than to take the risk of finding something new. But you could make a fairly humorous ad around that kind of an idea of it's getting worse and worse, and everybody can identify with how bad it is in healthcare.
Well, Larry and I talked for a little bit about using humor last time we spoke. I think that's definitely in our minds about how to do that. Thinking about that in a variety of ways and how to make that effective. So I've seen those razor blade commercials. They're hilarious, but they're not cheap. That's like a probably a couple $100,000 video, and I think we're gonna have to figure out a creative way to do it since we don't have that funding. But I suppose regardless of whether we use humor or whether we go through interviews or however we end up creating these the style we end up using for these videos, there's a couple of things that I think we have to decide. One is what information is critical for our audiences to know in order for them to decide whether they should buy into this model, right? And so I think, I guess I would ask before, everyone hops off here, if everyone could go around and tell me for patients what they think is important, and then for employers what they think is important, like the most critical pieces of information, what they do need to know and what they don't need to know. We can start with, I guess, Rashik, are you still there?
I think he had to drop off.
Okay. Do you want to start with maybe Brian? Do you want to tell us what you think maybe is the most critical actual sort of facts and nuts and bolts that people need to understand in order to wrap their head around this model enough to make a decision?
Are you meaning the thing that patients like the best about the model, or the thing that makes patients understand the concept?
Makes patients understand the concept enough to make an informed decision.
Okay. I always like sort of the way I explain it is as like a gym membership. And what I'll explain to people is, a lot of patients have been members of gyms, and they've never gone into a gym and had to have somebody follow them around and write down every time they lift a dumbbell and every time they get on a treadmill, and that person following them around would impede their ability to work out, and it would also add a lot to the cost of their membership, because the gym would have to pay the person following them around, itemizing everything, more than the cost of their membership for a whole month. And when you go into the gym, you don't want to feel like because you want to work out more or you need more services at the gym that your cost is more. And so direct primary care is like that in the sense that you cut out all of the administrative itemization of all the services you use and make it so that, you've got a membership somewhere, you've got somebody who's, you're a client of, and whenever you need to access those services, whether it's, a Monday or a Saturday, whether you need to get in today or you need to come in for a workout a week later, the access is there, the accessibility of a gym. You don't necessarily have to always have an appointment to go work out. And secondly, that it's simple. Once you pay your monthly fee, then whatever services you need to access in the gym, you can access for that fee. There may be some months that you use it more, and there may be sometimes you use it less, but whatever degree of use you need to get out of it, you're going to have sort of a set expense. And a lot of people really can wrap their heads around that. I think that's the best way to explain it. And also that there's no set amount of time that they have. So, you have people can take as long as they need to. So there's no time limit on the amount of money that they've spent each month. Doesn't guarantee them, just 5 minutes in the gym or an hour in the gym. They can spend as long with the personal trainer or as long with the physician as they need to get their concerns addressed.
Okay. And I suppose if you were comparing and contrasting that description of the model with sort of the why is that model better than what they have? What do they need to know about that model versus the model they currently have that, to compare and contrast, do you think that makes DTC sound so appealing?
Well, because in that model, they can access the service when they need it, when it's expedient, and when they need the service, they can access it rather than having to be on a schedule or be delayed. And when they access that service, they also can have as much time as they need. In other words, lots of people will say now about the current system that they just feel like their doctor doesn't listen to them, that they spend the entire time, facing away from them, typing in and checking boxes on a computer to make sure that the insurance covers the visit rather than actually addressing their concerns. And so the fact that you get sort of however much time and resources that you need to take care of your individual situation, I think is really important. And the other contrast, again, is it's predictable. I mean, one of the big things about the traditional healthcare system is that nobody can know what their bill's going to be when they step through those office doors. I mean, even if they have a copay, there may be lab tests that weren't covered. There may be procedures that were done that were, costlier than what they get covered. And also for the people who haven't met their deductible, it's not necessarily a copay. It may, and there's no way even in many traditional offices that at the front desk window, if you're coming in for something, that they can tell you exactly what the bill's going to be till you leave. And in DPC, there's complete price transparency. You know exactly what your cost is going to be on a monthly basis, and you know if you can budget for that. And I would say that same benefit goes for employers, that employers get some predictability out of knowing what their expense is going to be, because at least the primary care part of it becomes much more predictable in a direct primary care model.
Well, I would say on that, Brian, there is some variation in those business models of some people having quite large variations, and the labs are included, they're not. The x-rays are included, they're not. The vaccines are included, they're not. So I would say that specific message is not necessarily true for all DPC models, but certainly the price of the doctor is transparent.
Right. So what about employers? So if you were trying to sell this idea to an employer, what do you think the most important 3 points are to sell an employer? Brian, you want to continue, and then we can move on to something else?
Sure. I mean, I think even if we give employers credit and say they want happy employees that are productive, I think the bottom line is employers are getting squashed by cost. I mean, they're getting killed by their health care part of their budget. And so I think cost is number one. They've got to know that there are real immediate cost savings, that there are downstream cost savings. It's not only that their health care is going to be less expensive in this model in real time, their health care for employees that stay with the company 20 years are going to be lower, because the rate of those people having complications from chronic disease, the rate of hospitalizations and readmissions are going to be lower. We're finishing up a study right now with a 92% reduction in readmissions in the DPC model versus traditional, and that's going to save an employer money. And that's also, I think Rashika mentioned earlier, productivity, but from a time out of work standpoint. If your employee is in the hospital and then they get out and they have to go back in the hospital, obviously that's an employee that you're not getting any productivity out of. So I think those are probably the key points.
Gotcha. Okay, so Erica, you want to tell me what you think the most important points are that patients need to know in order to make an informed decision about this?
Trying to think of what I can add. I want to kind of think about it some more based on this conversation. So I'm going to reserve my input for the moment, because I kind of, based on all the stuff we've been talking about, I think I want to muse on that a little bit.
Okay. Alan, do you want to say something?
Well, and I think that we've hit those value points. To me, the biggest problem is the momentum that patients have and employers have. There's a momentum of this fear of not changing. I want to talk to my insurance agent. It's like there's a momentum factor that just prevents everybody from taking the step to say, I'm going to do something different. So I find that almost more problematic than the values you try to sell. I mean, I've had insurance guys who run insurance companies knock the table and say, I don't care what you do. If you don't do everything exactly the way I do it, I'm not interested in what you do. So I've had employers tell me very similar ideas, like that sounds too far out of the box. I just think that there's that problem where the momentum is the thing that kind of blocks people from stepping forward and saying, I need to do something different. I'm starting to have enough pain. I'm suffering enough that I need to do something different.
So this is Larry. I'm going to jump in here for a second. So one of the things that I know about the issue that you're addressing, Alan, which is how do you create movement in a population? If you remember, you've probably all seen me present the social diffusion curve, moving from innovators to early majority to late majority to laggards. And one of the mistakes in trying to sell a new idea is trying to convince the people on the right side, the laggards and the late majority. Those are people who aren't going anywhere until the whole center moves. So really what we're looking for right now is we're really trying to find the people, you guys are the innovators, and we're looking for the early adopters, the people who are open, they're curious, and they're looking for a better way. And I think if we target more to them, they will, as I forget if it was Rashika or whoever, be the ones who will go back inside their companies and say to their employers, hey, I got this new thing, man, and it's really good. We ought to get this for everybody. So I think in terms of targeting the kinds of messaging, you will never come up with a story that's compelling enough to get a laggard to jump on board with the idea, or people do. Well, they'll take you down, you know. So I think that's important for us to keep in mind, Nathan. We're looking for a certain kind of, there are millions of them out there. We just have to connect with them, and they'll tell their neighbors, and they'll tell employers.
Right.
That's, I think, a very great point, Larry.
Right, which is why.
And to me, the target. I was going to say, to me, the target group then is still the group that has high deductibles. The people who are ready to hear the message are the high deductibles, the HSAs, and at least from the patient side, and perhaps a lot of the entrepreneurs, people who are out there saying, I don't have time to get health care and it's too expensive and I need a different alternative. But to me, that's what I found, is those people are really ready to listen.
There you go.
I can't always make them jump, but I can at least get them to listen.
Well, that to me is the key.
So.
I get one other question. One of the things that Nathan and I have talked about, the impact of celebrity. So if there were a celebrity who's either recognizable, of course, you know, if Oprah were at the beginning of this and she said, hey, I want to tell you about something I've learned about, people are going to watch the whole video. But I'm wondering if any of you have come across a person who you might call an influential person, or a celebrity, someone who's known for being known. Any thoughts about that?
I don't have anybody who's that You're the only celebrity I know, Larry.
Oh, you do. Excellent. You do. You have Jonathan Lincoln.
I do, but nobody knows him besides a few.
But his title, President of the American Telemedicine Association, is a big deal.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I'm sure he'd be willing to help us, but
my suspicion is that
some celebrities that are in DPC models as patients. The problem is they want to be anonymous in those places. I think that they're so used to being endorsers of things. Like, for example, one of them is a NFL quarterback who goes to a DPC doc and thinks it's underpriced and said he would basically pay anything to get that kind of care. But the problem is it would really stress that relationship to go to somebody like that who's used to sort of doing endorsements and getting paid lots of money, you know, for Doritos commercials or whatever, and ask them to do that. I think it would just be a stretch in some cases, at least with the ones that I know of.
Yeah. And I think certainly with the budget we have, it's going to be hard to get anybody recognizable. But I think when we were talking, there may have been a misunderstanding. I don't think a celebrity is the way to go. I do think potentially an actor, you know, or a little known comedian or something like that, which would be more affordable. Or you know, I can see a variety of ways to move forward with some sort of performance to communicate these messages. So my perspective is I don't think we want to have interviews in this film. I don't think we want. I think that's going to be unless they're put together in a really creative, engaging kind of way. I feel like we're going to lose our audience. And I think we need to think really carefully about the information that needs to get communicated and the audience that we need to get that information to. And then from there, we can sort of start thinking about a plan for, whether we want to try a celebrity or an actor or anything like that. But I think the first steps is really figuring out exactly, really distill the information down to its simplest form. What are the most essential things for people to know? What don't they need to know? What shouldn't we put in there? And what those things are for patients and for employers, specifically the ones we're trying to reach. And then once we have those ideas together, then I think we should move forward and talk about the strategy to get that information across. I think that's another conversation.
So you're saying let's think of a couple of creative ideas first that are entertaining.
Well, no, I don't. No, I think we should avoid thinking about that right now, because I think that the critical thing and the thing that you guys all bring to the table is your guys' extensive knowledge of having sold this idea for lots of years to lots of people. You guys have experienced what works, what doesn't work. And so I think that's the information that we really should be focusing on right now. And then I think that the way in which we communicate that information, we should talk about in another conversation.
So I'm a little bit at a loss of what you mean by that. I guess the big problem I find is I don't know what works. I just know who my target market is, but I don't really know what works. And I've spent 15 years, wasted all kinds of money doing this, doing thousands of things, and it just word of mouth is kind of what works. That's about it. And every once in a while, the internet and a few AdWords. Besides that, I have no idea. To me, it's a momentum thing. No one wants to jump. Everybody's stuck.
Right.
So that's
you can talk values, but they're not interested. They're stuck in their hot water, and they don't want to get out of it.
So, Brian, is that your sense that everybody's stuck? I have the sense that you've got a growing network, and you got DPC docs springing up, and they're building their practices. So somebody's clearly getting on.
Well, yeah, I think this might be a fundamental disagreement, Larry, because I think the number one way that people buy into this model is stories from people like them. And I know, I was on NPR one time, and they were interviewing a patient. They actually interviewed this patient for 30 minutes on NPR. And I know that patients pulled in our parking lot and were scheduling appointments while this was happening at our office, while they were interviewing patients. And I also remember a time where, same thing. It was patients telling their stories is what really got it across to people, because, if I stand up there and try to tell patients why they should like it, that's one thing. Obviously, the doctor doing it is saying this is what's better, but when people that they can relate to have made that jump, when they've jumped out of water, that's what gets people's attention. And, the practices, I'll just give you an example. We've had 2 DPC practices that have only been open 6 months that started from scratch and have over 600 people sign up in the first 6 months. And so the messaging that I think we're getting across, I think the messaging that we're getting across that, the people that come to our practice are just like you. They've just made that jump out of the frying pan that was getting hot and into a better place. That's what really relates to people. And the same thing with employers. The only way I can sell an employer these days is to go to an employer and say, look, here's somebody else who did it. Here's a company that's bigger than yours, more innovative than yours, that's more successful than yours, and they chose DPC, and that gets them to jump and make that leap. So we've been very successful with that. So I don't know. I guess I'm a little bit in disagreement about not doing interviews with people who have chosen the model, because I think the way you get people to make that choice is to relate to other people that have made that choice.
So I'm going to make a suggestion. This is Larry again. It's getting close to 4 o'clock. We've really stirred the pot well here to talk about the hot water boiling up, and that's a pretty cool image that we might be able to play with. But I think we've started to stoke the fire here. I know Erica's thinking about it, and that's a pretty powerful thing when we get Erica thinking about this stuff in the background. So why don't we call it a day here? And Nathan and I have got some more work to do, and we may come back to you again with some refined ideas. And in the meantime, if you have some thoughts or some suggestions or ideas that you'd like to pass along, we've all got one another's email addresses, and you can share that with us.
That's
Nathan, was there any final comments that you wanted to bring up?
No, that's excellent. I really appreciate everyone's perspective. And if you guys do have ideas or examples of work that you guys think was effective, it doesn't have to be healthcare, please go ahead and send them our way. You can say, this seemed like it really worked, or this one didn't seem like it really worked. That would be helpful for me to hear what you guys think works, because I'm not really part of that world. But yeah, I think that is good. I would also appreciate, Brian, you gave, I really liked your analogy about the gym membership. And I was hoping that each of you on the phone could, go back to that question that says that question that we had, which is what information you think is critical for your audiences to know, and maybe think about for your patients and for your employers, and just maybe if you guys have time, send a bullet list of 3 or 4, not metaphors or stories, but specific information that compares and contrasts sort of the traditional model from DTC that you guys think is critical for them to make an informed decision. And tell me what those are for patients and employers, what you guys think that they are for patients and employers, so we can really distill the message and think about the information that we really need to get across.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Perfect. Thanks. It was good talk.
Hey, Brian, could you stay on for just a moment?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
All right, gentlemen, take care.
All right, thanks. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.